So when you think about urban street trees, geez, we demand a lot of them. We plant them for various reasons and often don't specify, environmental, aesthetic, statutory, whatever it might be. And the selection of urban trees can be sort of determined by their characteristics, site factors, how much they are to buy, and manage and maintenance costs. So things start to get a little bit complicated when you think about what trees we want and where we want them. And when you're looking at selection, you know, the availability of the species, the pest and disease capacity and resistance, the appropriateness of the species for nearby ecosystems, biogeographical features, for example, are all significant. So there's a lot going on as you think about it. And what you find, though, is that there are certain common characteristics. So for most urban trees, we've got a wide phenotypic plasticity for stress tolerance, which is a good thing, tolerance of restrictive sort of urban space, and for limb breakage and severance, as we'll see in a minute. So it became pretty obvious to us a long time ago that Eucalyptus leucoxylon was a pretty good candidate to have a look at as an urban tree for a number of reasons. One, of course, it's one of those few eucalypts on the east coast that have attractive flowers. Most of them seem to come from the west. It flowers regularly and consistently, and you can grow it pretty easily from seedlings. But of course, you get the seedling variability, so good ones and bad ones. So this research had three main objectives. The first, establish arboricultural criteria for assessing street tree performance, and then success. To look at these leucoxylons across Melbourne and see how they went against those criteria. And then to use all of that information to pick out some really good leucoxylons and say, if you're going to propagate, these are the ones. Now, there might be several different types, but to give some information back to the nursery industry so that instead of getting some scraggly looking old thing, we've got something that's actually been looked at, assessed, recommended, and then propagated for a particular purpose. So, where do I conclude? What do we conclude from this? Well, firstly, we know that it's a widely planted street tree and that it does well. It shows, this study, that it is a successful and very valuable street tree. And it exhibits many, if not all, of the characteristics that we demand of an urban street tree. There is phenotypic variability, and so there must be selection and propagation from the best that's available. Leucoxylon is planted well beyond its native range, and we've just heard in that excellent presentation prior to us that very often a species is limited by one factor in its life cycle, and it's very often early on in its life cycle. So they very often have much greater capacities for growing outside their natural environments than we give them credit for. And I think what this study on leucoxylon does is it suggests to you that there's going to be plenty of room for Australian native species in our streets as climate changes.